Thanks, Christine, and thanks everyone for joining. Hopefully I can share some of my experience and it'll be helpful to you guys in your transition. Just first off, a little bit about myself. I graduated with a applied math engineering degree from Queen's University up in Canada. I'm sure a lot of you guys are from the States. I am Canadian. I started off my career doing internships in London, England at Merrill Lynch. As soon as I graduated, I moved to UBS Securities in the Canadian office. Spent a few years there in banking as well as equity research, followed by institutional trading with their group in Boston. Lived there for a couple of years. Came back and was doing some investor relations work in the mining space, and I'm now working at Scotia Capital doing sales for their electronic trading group. So I've kind of jumped around, but have been in lots of groups across finance. So lots of different experiences there. I'm just going to walk you through, from my perspective, what various items. So what it means to be a professional, how you can really plan your career path and build your personal brand. One of my favorites is managing expectations of people around you and your managers. Work-life balance, which can always be a struggle in any industry, but particularly in finance. And what can I do to prepare for my life at work when I'm still at school? And hopefully can get you guys some helpful job searching tips. Being professional. Women, I'm sure there's a few women on the call today. It's difficult being a young professional in general. It's also difficult being a young woman professional because women can tend to look quite young. Sometimes it's difficult to be taken seriously. So my advice to you guys, generally speaking, is always dress very professionally, especially when you come in your first couple months as people are getting to know you. Wear business clothing, even if people around you are wearing something a little bit more casual. Try and play the part, and conduct yourself in a way that makes you look mature to people around you. And you don't come in the first day and start joking around like you do with your friends. Eventually, you'll probably get there with your colleagues, but keep it professional. In terms of when you're assigned tasks to do, generally what I try to do is manage expectations in terms of this is what I think I can handle and what I will be able to deliver, and make sure it's something that you can do a really good job at, and that people are going to be wowed by what you've committed to do because you're capable of delivering that. Don't promise to do something that you have no idea how to do, which a lot of people, when they first get into a company, they really want to impress, and sometimes they don't quite know how they're going to do it and expect to be able to learn how to do it, but you can't always manage to fake it to that extent. So undercommit and over-deliver when you do have projects to do. Asking for help is something that's very important to do, but there's I find a very subtle way that you need to do this. I like to ask a lot of questions. I like it when junior people ask me a lot of questions, but make sure that they're smart questions. If there's a question that you have that you can find the answer on Google it. Don't ask somebody beside you. I find, some dumb questions or dumb questions meaning questions that you could readily find the answer to, are a big turnoff for managers because they feel like their time is being wasted. But a well thought through question that shows that you're really thinking about things and wanting to learn more can be really beneficial. All the little things, I'm sure you've heard all of this before. Show up on time. I would even go to say you probably want to be the first person in the office. You want to be there when everybody else walks in, and because then they're not sitting around going, oh, the new guy or the new girl isn't here yet. it does go a long way. One of my first bosses told me, early bird gets the worm. So get there early. Being early is a very good way to get ahead, absolutely. Dress appropriately for your job. We sort of went over this, but particularly women out there, you don't want to look too good, if you know what I mean. So you want to keep your clothing something that's not distracting to people around you. You also, you want to look professional. So, and perhaps sometimes older than you look. So, not wearing, the kinds of things that you would wear out to a dinner party or something, but more suits and less skirts is probably a good idea, especially at the beginning. Little things: be respectful to everyone around you. Often when you join a company, there's subtle dynamics between people within the organization. People that have known each other a long time will joke around and kind of poke fun at each other. When you first join a company, I would say that you don't want to be joking around and making fun of people the way that maybe the person next to you is, because they've got a longer standing relationship. So just be very respectful when you first join and wade slowly into that kind of joking around. Don't ever take sides in office drama. There's always office drama wherever you go, and you'll have somebody come to you and say, so and so said this, or this person's doing this, and my advice would be to say, oh, well, have you talked to them about that? Or maybe they don't know. It would probably be good for them if you mentioned that to them. But don't get involved. It can be detrimental for sure, especially at the beginning. One thing that you'll realize very early on is that no one actually cares about your career all that much. There are people out there that will help you, but only to a certain extent. You really have to be the one that owns your career. It's really up to you. So I wouldn't rely too much on other people to carry you, so to speak. So just remember that you're responsible for your own career. I think it's a great idea to take a step back every 6 months or so and say, am I happy in my job? What am I doing in my job? Could I be doing something differently in my job to be moving in the direction that I want to be moving if I'm not? Or am I just happy in my job? So, reevaluating every so often is a very good thing to do. I wouldn't do it every couple weeks because we all have good and bad weeks, and I can have 2 weeks where I absolutely hate my job, but 2 weeks later I love it again. So allow for yourself to have some tough months here and there, but do reevaluate how happy you are in your job and what you can do to get where you want to go on a regular basis. In terms of expertise, when you're starting in a new job, you don't have necessarily a field of expertise. So if you do get a choice of a particular area to be in, for example, in finance, if you have a choice to be a research associate in financials versus oil and gas, particularly in Canada, oil and gas is, a very interesting and vibrant industry that has application not only in finance but in industry, in consulting, et cetera. So you might say, do I want to develop an expertise in this particular industry, or do I want to develop an expertise in analyzing banks or financial companies? And there's no right or wrong answer, but having something that is a clear skill that is marketable beyond that particular job is very useful, and especially finding something early on that you enjoy is a great thing to do. So If there's something about your job that you don't like, not early on. I mean, I would give yourself at least a good amount of time, call it, 3+ months in a particular spot before you approach your manager and ask for ways to change your role or make your role something different. A pitfall that a lot of, I guess, young people or people that are graduating get into is they've come out of school and they've got a fantastic degree, they've got great knowledge, and they end up in a role that isn't challenging enough or fulfilling enough. And I think that that's probably most people when they get out of school, because you do end up doing some pretty menial tasks, things that aren't challenging you or things that you think are beneath your knowledge and skill level. It's very important for managers to see that you are able to tough that out, to spend the time doing the grunt work, to put it in in that kind of way, but to do some grunt work and to have the patience and the humility to be able to do that is a very valuable skill, because you're not always going to be able to be the superstar, because not everybody can be a superstar. So being able to do that is very important. Within the organization, it's always great to find somebody who you don't necessarily work directly with, not your boss and not your peer or somebody too close to you, but somebody in the group over or in another area who is a couple levels above you, who's been there, who is happy to have lunch with you once a month or once every couple months and check in, see how it's going. You can, without gossiping, but share kind of some of the issues that you're facing and ask for advice. That can be very beneficial. And it's nice to have somebody that you can ask, questions at the company who isn't your boss, like, well, how do I book vacation, or am I going to be in trouble if I book vacation right now, or questions that you don't really want to ask your boss maybe. And I mean, just in closing on all of that, this is all part of your personal brand. When you enter the workforce, every interaction that you have with colleagues, with people below you, with your superiors, are all things that people will remember about you, your name. People will ask about you when you're looking for another job, through friends and connections and networks. It's something that you carry with you, good or bad. So managing and building your personal brand early on is very important. Managing expectations. This is a very, very important skill. When you enter a new job or a new assignment as a consultant or whatever it is, probably a very important thing to do is to establish with your manager what it is that they are expecting from you, and be very clear and concise. So, if you're in a sales role, you say, like, what do you expect from me in terms of sales targets? Like, please give me expected sales targets, or, what is the timeline of this project? When does this have to be done? What is the soft end date of this? What is the drop dead date of this project? What is the goal of this? What are we trying to accomplish? Just really understanding the problem ahead of time, or the task, or whatever it is, and then making sure that you're on the same page as your superior is extremely valuable. Yes, that's a good point. If you're going to miss a deadline, communicate it early. Often something will happen that's out of your control, and even though there was a particular deadline, maybe one of your vendors or somebody that you're working alongside with is unable to deliver for whatever reason, and no amount of working late will make you meet that deadline. And if that's the case, let them know as soon as possible and explain what's going on. And I mean, unless you have a very unreasonable boss, most people are appreciative of the heads up, and as long as you've got a good reason, then it shouldn't be a problem. The whole concept of trade-offs is, I'm happy to spend my time doing this, but if I do spend my time doing this, then that means that I'm not going to do this. Are you okay with that? And making sure that it's almost helping them manage you better. If you lay out what your capabilities are and the amount of time that will take, don't abuse that. I mean, if you want to go home at 4 o'clock one day for some reason, don't use the excuse of, oh, it's going to take me all night to do that, so I can't do it, kind of thing, because that doesn't work out so well. Make sure that when you're communicating your time availability, that you're being honest about it, and it's not in order to get out of work, which happens a lot, more than you would think. When you do have when you present your manager with a problem, don't just say, I've got this issue. Before you go to them, think about, what are the possible ways that we can tackle this issue, and make your suggestion. Just say, I thought maybe we could do this to solve the problem. And they really appreciate that because they're typically quite busy and are probably dealing with more than just your problems. Work-life balance. Coming from school, work-life balance is a very tough thing. Coming from, you can pretty much make your own schedule. You've got maybe 1 or 2 morning classes a week, but the rest of the time you can sleep in and work into the night if that's the way that you like to live your life. Whereas when you go into a workplace, you're at the mercy of the schedule that's been given to you. So if you know that you're starting a job, my recommendation is to start your body on that clock. I found it very difficult when I started working out of school because I was used to getting up quite late at university. And when I started and was having to get up at 6 in the morning every day, it can be very challenging. So acclimating yourself to that can be a good idea so that you're ready to go when you're on the job when you start. I would say limiting your social calendar for especially the first 2-3 weeks of a job, it is important because you're trying to figure out what's expected of you, and you want to be available to stay late or to go for a drink with the team or whatever it is in the first little part of your job. So, there are obviously things that you have to do, but I wouldn't book yourself up completely with evening activities and sports and gym and friends and all that kind of stuff in the beginning. Give yourself a little bit of space to figure out what your work-life balance is going to look like. One thing I think is so important is to always make time for things that are really important for you, whether that be the ability to work out, to spend time with a loved one, to have a weekend off regularly so you can travel to visit mom or dad or whoever it is. But there are certain things that are very important to you, and I've seen people sacrifice some of those things, and it makes them miserable, and they're not good at their job, and they're not happy in life. So make time for the things that are really important for you. Networking is important. It's very important as a new person. You want to get to know as many people at the firm where you're working as quickly as possible because it makes getting tasks done, knowing who to call to solve certain issues. Just building those relationships can help you immensely at the beginning, and it gives you a better understanding of the firm. It gives you more people to talk to about what kind of work they do, and it's very educational. So, try and do as many networking events as possible. But I've also seen a lot of people come in and they're out all night with their colleagues, and they have a really, really rough day the next day, so try and not let that happen. Ask to take colleagues out for lunch. Just say, hey, can I treat you to lunch? I'd like to chat with you about, what it's like to, what your job is like and where you've come from. And just take it. Most of the time, people will say yes. They probably won't let you pay, but you can at least offer. And it's a great way to extend the olive branch and start building relationships with people that you respect. While you're at school, I can only speak from the experience of finance, but there are lots of things that you can do to prepare yourself, things that I wished I'd done more of most of the time when I got there. But, reading is so important. I think when you get into your job, you're thrown right into, I spend 2 hours a day reading the news. And it's if somebody had told me in university that I would spend 2 hours every day reading news, I would have thought that's just crazy. Why would you spend 2 hours a day reading news? But there's so much information out there, and that is absolutely what gives you an edge in capital markets. So, reading, going to the library at your school and picking up a copy of The Economist every month or every 2 weeks, and reading through that, as well as, depending on what market you're in, reading the relevant financial newspaper, the Wall Street Journal, Financial Times, Globe and Mail, whatever it is, and making sure that you're doing that every day so that you're not missing big events that are going on in the financial community. And then in school, if you do still have the opportunity to take some electives, they may not be things that you're extraordinarily passionate about, but taking a technical writing class, taking an accounting class, taking an extra economics class, those kind of things, depending on, your major might be one of those things, who knows. But mine was applied math engineering, so those particular electives made a huge difference for me because at least, you know the basics of accounting and a little bit of microeconomics and macroeconomics going in. And you do quite a bit of writing in finance, whether you're writing research reports or morning sales notes or whatever it is. There is a fair amount of writing, and it can be quite technical in nature, depending on what your topic is. So looking for jobs. I'd say most people that I know have gotten a job through somebody that they know. And it doesn't have to be somebody that they know extremely well. It can be just one friend placing a call to another acquaintance saying, hey, you should interview this person, they're great, and then that can be all it takes. But having as broad of a network and asking. Sometimes we're embarrassed to ask people to get us an interview or see if there's a job posting somewhere. Just spread it far and wide and ask as many people as possible. Using LinkedIn is fantastic. I'm sure most of you guys are on that, but that's a very powerful tool. eVisors is a great tool as well. You can chat with people about particular firms, get advice on interviewing at those particular places, and even make connections that way. So, and as I mentioned previously, stay on top of your sector so that when you do get that interview, it might be the next day. It might be, oh, can you come in this afternoon? And you want to be ready. You want to be ready to have your top interview in that moment. So it's not about spending 3 days before an interview cramming to try and figure out how to sound smart. You want to actually know what you're talking about in case you do get that last-minute interview. Having something other than school on your resume is extremely important, whether it's sports or you volunteered at a certain place or you were part of a startup with a friend of yours, or you've been working towards your CFA, or you've written your Series 7 or whatever it is in your particular industry that you've done is great on a resume and something something to talk about that makes you human to the interviewer, because that can go a long way. And I think that's mostly what I wanted to say. I think there may be a couple questions, Christine.
Yes, excellent. Thank you very much, Karen. That was fantastic. So we do have a couple questions that have come in, but I encourage anyone else to chat in their questions as well as we go through these. One of the questions, actually a couple that were submitted in advance as well, deal with, coming out of school, you don't have a lot of experience. So I break this into two things. One being, if you come out of school with very little experience and you're still looking for a job, what are, some different strategies you may try or think about, internships, or there are other things that they could do, and then also actually starting that job with less experience. So first start going with looking for a job when you don't have a lot of experience out of school.
Well, you're in the same position as everybody coming out of school. So most people don't have, some people coming out of school will have had an internship already, and they have a leg up in that regard. But graduating, you can still apply for the internships that the third years or the penultimate year students are doing. Particularly in finance, internships are far and above the way that people get into the industry, which is it's probably the easiest way. If you don't have any real work experience, I think the thing that you really want to impress upon people is your knowledge of the space. Of, I am very active in staying on top of what's going on in this particular space, and I'm working towards particular designations, especially if you're done school and you're not working and you're still looking for work. If you're going and you say, I'm studying full-time for my CFA, that's attractive to people. So, keep busy. Don't just twiddle your thumbs and wait for the job to come along. Take, if the job market's tough right now, I completely understand. But I'd say, take a job that you might not be exactly what you want, but at a firm that you might be interested in, because you can always move laterally once you get in. So something that's
excellent.
Yeah. What was the second
Perfect.
part, Christine?
Actually, I'm gonna ignore the second part right now and just focus on the internship part in finance. We just had a question there. So if you're looking to get into investment banking, you looked at sales and trading when you were still in school. You didn't have a finance background.
Yeah.
How did that work for you, and kind of any lessons that you learned?
So I got into finance by starting to work essentially as an admin assistant after my second year of my undergrad. I joined the company in a administrative role as a summer job and networked while I was there. They invited me back to do an internship the following summer. So then by the time I graduated, I'd gone through a full global markets internship program and had a much better understanding of the space. So it was through literally taking just a crappy job as an admin assistant or whatever at a company as a summer job that really got me in the door and allowed me to start learning and asking questions. So.
Right. So I guess it's one of the lessons from that is sometimes you have to, take a job that may not, that is a path to where you want to be necessarily then
right.
Directly in there.
Especially when you're starting, yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. That's a great story. And then I have another question that comes in, still kind of on the finance side. Do you think that, it's become harder to build a career in finance than it was, let's say, 10 years ago?
Yes. I think it definitely is. Unfortunately, in this environment, there are a lot of people who are very who have a lot of experience, who are without a job right now. So it's tough coming in as a student up against, a lot of people that are looking for those jobs that have a lot more experience. But the thing that younger people or fresh grads have to offer is an untainted attitude, lots of energy, willingness to work hard, whereas some of the people that have been in the industry for a while that have lost their jobs are not as full of energy, and it's getting tough for them out there. And you can leverage on the fact that you're young, that you're keen, and that you are willing to work really hard. So
excellent. And so this is a question a little bit on, you had mentioned about office drama and kind of getting along with your colleagues. Do you have any examples of common problems that you see kind of with coworkers, like different personalities or different working styles, that people should be prepared for?
It really is across the whole spectrum of all the problems that you'd see in a high school or in a college, or because people everywhere you go are the same. People just don't like each other, or people don't like each other's attitudes, or they want to be better than other people, or most people are great, but you will always run into people that don't want you to succeed because they want to be the best, or just straight up personality conflict. So I think
in those situations, let's say when you're facing a personality conflict or a different working style, what have been some successful strategies that either you've tried or you've seen with other people?
I think often those relationships, those specific relationships, can be salvaged. I think there's very few situations where it's just an untenable relationship where you can never start to work together. And I think taking some very basic conflict resolution, non-confrontational type actions by being a person that person can tolerate in certain situations, and being patient with them, and complimenting them, being nice to them, often they can come around. So that's generally been how I've dealt with those particular situations. If you're working for somebody who there's just absolutely no connection, and they're not very nice to you, and you don't think it's ever going to change, then you start looking for another job, or you speak to your mentor and say, I don't think that this is right. Like, just confidentially, I don't think this is working out well between myself and this person. What do you think I should do? I think I might want to move teams. How do you suggest I go about that? And as long as there's somebody you can trust. You can also talk to HR. I haven't found that particularly helpful, particularly in finance. But depending on the industry, I think that might work if it was a serious situation.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And you spoke about looking at when, if it's really not working, you may even go as far to look for a new job. You've moved across a couple different roles. When have you thought, this is time for new challenges, when I should start looking for a job? What are kind of your, indicators that time for a change?
I think the hardest relationship is if you're working for somebody who you might not have a lot of respect for whatever reason, or it's you don't see that particular job going further because of that. You feel like you're being held back by that type of management style. Then start looking. But I've only done that once in my career, so I think it's pretty rare.
Rare.
Yeah, very rare.
Okay. Excellent. Moving on to some other topics here. You mentioned a little bit about professional certification earlier. In the finance field, can you speak a little bit about, let's say, what professional certifications work well in investment banking versus, let's say, some other areas of finance?
Investment banking doesn't generally need a lot of certifications, like investment banking being the iBanking arm of a financial firm, the mergers and acquisitions and that type of area. Within sales and trading, if you want to be a registered salesperson or a trader, you do have to complete, depending on your jurisdiction, a whole bunch of tests, which are not particularly challenging compared to a lot of tests you've probably written in your life, but they are time consuming, and to get a head start on some of those, like most dealers in the U.S. require everybody to write their Series 7. So if you get a chance, then you can start writing that. The other side of the coin on that is that once you're in a firm, they will pay for you to do all of that stuff. So it's really a personal choice on how much you think it's worth going ahead and doing those things, because most of the time you'll end up footing the bill if you do it ahead of time. So
right. And what about the CFA? Would that be something you would look at?
Yeah, well, it's in Canada, the CFA is very well recognized in capital markets as it's very well respected. It will very much be a gold star on your resume. In the rest of the world, in the U.S., it's not as recognized, but it is a very it's a fantastic designation. It's extremely difficult. It does take 2 to 3 years, and that's something that if you wanna get or more, it takes some people 7 years, but if you wanna get on that train, I would say starting while you're in school is a huge leg up. Try and get, because it's a 3 separate exams, and so if you can get the first one done before you start working, that's fantastic, and I would recommend doing that. It also will give you a really broad understanding of a lot of different areas within capital markets, which immediately will help you in interviews and help you when you get on the job. So.
Right. So particularly if you have maybe a non-traditional background or you have less experience, it could be, the CFA can be a good brand to kind of complement your resume.
Yeah.
But it is a big commitment to do.
It is a big commitment. But you can, even starting and writing your level 1 is beneficial, even if you don't finish, I would say. So.
Okay, excellent. So we are running up a little tight on time, so if people have final questions that they want to ask, please type those in now. We have room for 1 or 2 more. We do have one on following up on job applications. So particularly for internships, if people are applying for internships and haven't heard back, how much would you follow up with, let's say, HR or the hiring person within a job for an internship?
Well, it depends on how you've applied for if you've applied for the internship with someone directly, I would say follow up until they tell you you didn't get the internship. If you applied online, then I would say that your follow-up email or whatever is probably not going to go anywhere. But people don't mind you following up, especially if they've told you the last time that they're still waiting to hear or whatever. If they told you we're going to let you know in April, don't call them in February and say, did I get it? Did I get it? Wait till April, and then if you haven't heard in and around the time, then give them a shout. But you can ask specifically, do you know when you might be making your decision? And if you
haven't heard from anyone, then you might try to hunt down an email address and follow up, but that's probably where you'd leave it.
Yeah, I would say so.
So final question. So, let's say you have an MBA, or you're coming into your MBA, but your previous experience before your MBA is a little bit mixed. How can you cast that in a way to help you kind of break into the job market again?
Well, if you're looking, is this into finance specifically, or just back into the job market?
It was a general question, but you can put it in finance terms.
Okay. So getting back into finance, we're not in finance. You're in another industry, went and did your MBA, and you're wanting to get into finance. Probably the best way would be to do like a research associate analyst job in a sector that you were previously in. So, if you were working for, Bell Mobility before you went to do your MBA, then you might want to say you could be a telecoms associate analyst or something along those lines. Because within finance, they cover all the companies in the world, so it's beneficial to have kind of inside knowledge of how those particular industries work in the analysis of them. So you can leverage that. Coming out of an MBA is tough because you're graduating with a whole bunch of people, and depending on the job market at that particular time, it can be pretty challenging. My advice is to, not. I've run into quite a few MBAs when we were recruiting at various companies that I was at, and I'm not an MBA, but we were hiring, and people would kind of come up and expect a higher level job than an entry level position, and they see themselves as somebody who's extremely competent and has a good education and knowledge base, which they absolutely do. But firms generally still want to see you work your way up that particular ladder. So keeping in mind that, you may just want to get into a particular industry or a company and not being terribly concerned at the beginning about what your title is going to be and exactly where they're going to put you is probably my best piece of advice. So.
Right. Looking even at you starting as an admin role before getting the internship, sometimes you need to start lower than you necessarily want to, but to get to your overall goal.
Exactly. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, we are just out of time now, and I want to say thank you so much, Karen, for joining us and leading this webinar. I really appreciated your insights,